I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week I'm going to be taking a look at this morning's BAFTA nominations, give my thoughts, and ultimately tell you what matters and what doesn't matter, how not to overreact at this nominations presentation. Essentially what I'm going to be doing is give you three kind of overreactions and then what actually the proper reaction should be. Because every year these nominations usually happen right before the Oscars. People take a look at the list and they go, oh, I guess it's going to be the exact same as it is at BAFTA, and they don't do the deep dive of the individual industry awards or consider the fact that the Academy is different than BAFTA. So we're going to try to, especially for some of the top categories, do a little bit of analysis as to what you should be able to take away from BAFTA, what matters and what doesn't matter, and ultimately how you can use these nominations to help with your own Oscar predictions. This has been a crazy week just in terms of the delays and the unsureness of what's going to happen. Of course, I give my prayers to everyone out there struggling with the wildfires out in LA and hope everyone is all right. But for the purposes of this channel, just to give you guys a bit of an update, I'm going to be having this video now. Assuming the Oscars don't delay the nominations again, I'm going to give my predictions for the Oscar nominations on Monday, next Monday, probably Monday afternoon, Monday morning, probably Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time might as well. Just want to make sure that those nominations do eventually happen. And then I'm also going to be giving my live reactions as I do every year to the Oscar nominations. You can see my kind of true live reactions as they're happening, uploaded to the channel before we get into Critics' Choice and kind of predicting the award shows. But it is a very unpredictable time of the year just because of the delays. We don't know when their industry groups are going to give their nominations. So that's why you come to the channel, to hear my thoughts, to get my kind of analysis now in our 9th season, over 8.5 years of Oscar prognosticating, here to help you out with your own Oscar predictions, with my own coming on Monday. But starting off with this video, I'm going to be giving three overreactions and then the proper reaction. The first overreaction is that Sebastian Stan, he's definitely going to get nominated for The Apprentice, right? No, I think that's a bit of an overreaction. I think the proper reaction is that he definitely has a chance, but I don't think as strong of a chance as someone like a Daniel Craig. Now, going into the season, I probably would say, okay, Sebastian Stan would get in for SAG, and then Daniel Craig would get in for BAFTA, so it's funny to see them flipped. But it's not just because, you know, the initial obvious instinct is to go, okay, well, Daniel Craig is a British man, so of course he's going to get in at BAFTA. Of course, that doesn't always line up. They're not just kind of dogmatic in that sense. But what I do think is interesting is that it gives us a split. We know the top four are pretty locked in the Best Actor category. Chalamet, Brody, Domingo, Fiennes, they're all going to get nominated. It's that fifth slot that I think people are going to have debates about. Right now, though, I think a lot of people are saying, okay, definitely Stan got in an overperformance here at BAFTA. They love The Apprentice. But I think we should be hesitant and really take a look at the groups that nominated, for example, someone like a Sebastian Stan, The Apprentice. He got in at BAFTA and Golden Globes. Two groups that are very heavily, have an international voting members. The Globes have a bit of a mix, but they're very, international heavy. And of course, BAFTA is all international voters. And then you look at the other groups that didn't nominate Sebastian Stan, like SAG, like Critics' Choice Awards. Well, those are heavily American population voting groups. So what's the main difference there? Well, of course, Sebastian Stan is playing Donald Trump, the most polarizing figure in the States. And you could say he's very polarizing even in some place like the UK, but it's a little bit different when you're living in the States and he is actually your president. You have very intense feelings, even more so than some of the Brits, for example. So naturally, I think it makes sense that there's going to be a lot of an American contingent of the Academy, I would predict, that are just not going to vote for Sebastian Stan because of who he is playing. And that, I think, will ultimately hurt his chances. I think that's the way to understand things. I think on the surface level, you go, oh, it's weird that Craig is a British man, didn't get in at BAFTA, but he did get in at SAG. Well, it's not necessarily have anything to do, I think, with Daniel Craig. I think it has everything to do with Sebastian Stan, the role he's playing, and potentially how that will ultimately hurt his chances at a nomination. Of course, he's in the movie, which is about Donald Trump, which some people may not even watch, but we see, I think, Jeremy Strong do quite well in all these award shows. He gets in at Critics' Choice and at SAG, for example. So it's not necessarily to do with the movie. I think it has to do specifically with the role and the man he is playing, which is an incredibly controversial, polarizing figure. So I think because of that, don't just look at BAFTA and go, okay, Sebastian Stan got in at BAFTA. He has international support, and he's an American actor, right? So he should get in for the Oscars. I wouldn't say so. I would actually say that there's a larger still membership of the Academy that are largely more American than they are international, particularly within the acting branch, and that there will be a significant percentage of those people that won't vote for Sebastian Stan just because of who he plays. You may think that's unfair, but I think that's the reality of the situation. So the overreaction is Sebastian Stan's definitely getting nominated. The proper reaction is he has a chance, but he may not be able to overcome that hurdle with a largely still American voting group in the Academy. The second overreaction is that Wicked has no international support and it's going to, underperform on Oscar nominations morning. The proper reaction is that Wicked doesn't have as much international support as it does have American support, but it will still get 7+ nominations, 10+ nominations. I think that's the proper reaction. I think you can take a look at the BAFTA nominations and be surprised it didn't get in for adapted screenplay or film, for example. But two things can be true at once. The first thing being that Wicked definitely has a lot more American support than it does international support. We see that in the box office. We see that in just the appreciation of the original movie musical, the musical itself in Wicked. We see that represented in BAFTA nominations. So that all makes sense. We even see it represented in Wicked kind of not doing so well in an international voting group like the Golden Globes. So that can be true, but it can also be true that it is beloved in America and that it is a strong contender. Even in an international voting group like BAFTA, they still gave it for best visual effects and sound and production design and costume design. They still really like the movie, but it is still a technical-based movie. I remember I've never really jumped on the Wicked bandwagon. Some people, as soon as they saw the movie, they went, oh, this is winning Best Picture. There are serious Oscar prognosticators on Gold Derby and sites like that have it in its number one position. I've never predicted Wicked to win Best Picture. I think based on these nominations, it also gives us that confirmation of kind of what I've been thinking all along, which is that it's a largely American-based love for the movie, not as much international love. It's a movie that will definitely get nominated for Best Picture. It will get a lot of acting categories, a couple of acting categories, and a lot of other nominations in acting and technical categories. But its chances to win Best Picture are not realistic, and anyone who says that is probably living in their own LA-based, US-based bubble, where the movie is a genuine sensation, but if you know anything about the Oscars, you know that the international membership of the Academy has been growing in recent years, which heavily favors movies like Conclave or Amelia Perez, or I would even say Honora, over something like a Wicked. Maybe in the 90s, Wicked could have won the old kind of American-based Academy, but in the modern-day Academy, I think it has a low likelihood. So two things can be true. It doesn't have as much international support to win Best Picture, but it's still a major contender. It's still going to get in for Best Picture. And I think could potentially win in costume design, production design, a lot of visual effects, a lot of different categories. It will be a big winner on Oscar night, but it may not be a Best Picture winner. And then the final overreaction I want to mention is that the supporting acting races, they're so confusing, I don't know who to pick. The proper reaction is that the supporting acting races, if you're paying attention, actually have been pretty clear for a little while now. Let's talk about both of them, starting off with the Best Supporting Actress race. I think after these BAFTA nominations, it really helped clear things up. And I already discussed how I think the Supporting Actor race has been cleared up, and BAFTA just cleared that up even more so. But taking a look at Supporting Actress, I think the top two, in Zoe Saldana and Ariana Grande, are definitely getting nominated. They've been nominated everywhere. And then the third spot for me is definitely Jamie Lee Curtis for The Last Showgirl. I know it came out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere for me. It wasn't even a possible contender in my video back in October for this performance. But we have to look at the facts, and this is a classic example of just Oscar bias, of predicting one thing for months and then something coming out of nowhere at the last second and then being hesitant to predict it. But we try to be objective here. We try to get the highest accurate predictions. We're not just fan casting or dreaming, hope predicting of what's going to happen. We try to actually predict what's going to happen. And you look at the stats and you go, okay, well, Jamie Lee Curtis got in at SAG. We know SAG, which is actors, and the actors are the large branch of the Academy. That's a huge, significant factor that she got in at SAG. And they like her movie because they also nominated Pamela Anderson. And then you look at Jamie Lee Curtis. She was the only thing from her movie, The Last Showgirl, to even get shortlisted at BAFTA, or longlisted rather. So Pamela Anderson didn't even get longlisted at BAFTA. So there's a strong sense of, we know SAG at the very least likes her movie and likes her performance, and then BAFTA, we know that they may not like her movie as much, but they like her, the fact that she got longlisted. Oh, and then by the way, she got nominated at BAFTA despite being a sole longlist nominee. So there's a huge amount of support for Jamie Lee. We've seen this time and time again. I've been doing this now for, over 8.5 years, 9 seasons of Oscars, where someone wins an Oscar and then a couple years later kind of gets a surprising nomination. Sam Rockwell gets in for Vice. Eddie Redmayne gets in for The Danish Girl. You could even say someone like a Mahershala Ali, wins for Moonlight in 2016 and then wins again in 2018, or Tom Hanks in the 90s. We see this over and over again. If you get a win and you're a well-liked kind of celebrity and actress or actor, you can frequently get nominated a couple of years later for maybe a performance that isn't as well-liked as the one, just because the Academy really likes you. And that's what we've been seeing here. We're seeing American support with the SAG nomination. We're seeing international support with the BAFTA nomination. So we have a very well-liked actor. So I think it's a surprise to a lot of us. It was a surprise to me, particularly late in the season, but you have to look at the stats and the facts which indicate that Jamie Lee is going to get nominated. So those are the top 3. Then in the 4th spot, I think you have to go Isabella Rossellini. She's gotten in everywhere except for SAG, but she's in a really well-liked movie. Conclave had the most nominations at BAFTA, also tied for the most at Critics' Choice Awards. It's a really well-liked movie. She's a legendary actress who's never been nominated before. So there are 2 great reasons for Academy members to vote for her, because they like her movie and because she's never been nominated before and is a legend. And then, by the way, she got in everywhere except for SAG. So I think that makes just a clear understanding that if I'm going to pick anyone, she's probably the one that makes the most sense. So you put her in for the 4th slot, and then I'll give you the 5th slot. The 5th slot is up for grabs. If you want to go for Selena Gomez or Margaret Qualley or Felicity Jones, you can do that. It's all a matter of kind of personal preference and what your gut ultimately tells you. I'm not going to make a definitive statement on that just yet, but I'll give you that. But for the most part, the supporting actress race is not that confusing. It's the top 4 that I think are pretty clear, and then a 5th which you can debate on. And then the supporting actor race, I mentioned it on last week's episode, but I think it's abundantly clear who's going to get nominated. We know that Kieran Culkin, Yura Borisov, and Edward Norton, all 3 of those men have gone nominated literally everywhere. SAG, BAFTA, Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, everywhere. I know Edward Norton and Yura Borisov weren't in your predictions back in October, but they've gotten in everywhere, so you have to kind of consider them in. So those are kind of the top 3 locks. Okay, great. Then who's in the 4th spot? Jeremy Strong, I think, is the obvious pick. Why? Well, he got in on the 2 big industry awards that we want to look at, BAFTA and SAG. Okay, and then where else did he get in? Oh, at Golden Globes. The only place he didn't get in at was Critics' Choice Awards, which we mentioned earlier. The Americans maybe have a little bit of an aversion to The Apprentice, the movie in general, but the fact that I think it's a strong sign that we knew he was going to get in at BAFTA. They liked The Apprentice. It got longlisted in a bunch of places. But the fact that he also got in at SAG in a list of only 5 is another strong sign of support for him. You can not go for Jeremy Strong at the Oscars, but I think he has a very strong chance of getting nominated based on SAG, based on BAFTA, based on the Golden Globes, based on the type of performance that he's giving, transformative, playing a real-life person, the fact that he's a well-respected actor who's worked with many auteurs and has been in the industry many years, so Aaron Sorkin and James Gray. So he is a well-respected actor, and he's got everything on paper. You may not predict him for outside reasons, but ultimately, if you want to look at paper and what has the highest chance and likelihood of getting nominated, it's absolutely Jeremy Strong. If you're having like a serious predictions that's not just based on, hoping, Jeremy Strong has to be in them. So there's the top 4 right there. And then the 5th slot, we mentioned last week, is either going to be Denzel, Clarence Macklin, or Guy Pearce. Well, Denzel didn't get nominated at BAFTA, and Gladiator 2 underperformed in terms of nominations. That movie's waning in strength. Don't think Denzel is going to get nominated. So it becomes between Guy Pearce and Clarence Macklin, both which got nominated at BAFTA. Guy Pearce has a slight edge because he got in at the Golden Globes, where Clarence Macklin did not. And he also has the edge in the fact that I think The Brutalist is a more well-liked movie than Sing Sing. So, who's in the 5th spot? It's likely going to be Guy Pearce. So then, there you go. There's your 5 nominees. So in the supporting actor race, you have, I think, a pretty clear 5, maybe a 6. And in the supporting actress race, I think you have a pretty clear top 4. And in that 5th slot, you can kind of debate as to why. I know there's kind of been a lot of change recently in the supporting acting categories, But if you take a look at the numbers, if you do a deep dive on the trends of past nominees, you all get to the same point, which is that this actually clarified the supporting actress and supporting actor races, I think, that are pretty clear at this point, just as much as kind of like the best actor and best actor and lead actress, where it's really just that fifth slot that's kind of up for grabs. I really think the top four in almost all the acting categories are pretty secure, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Those are my overreactions. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and had a better understanding after watching this video of what matters and what doesn't matter. Like I mentioned, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss Monday's video at 12 p.m. Eastern time, we'll say, where I'm going to do a 45-minute long video doing a deep dive, giving all of my Oscar nominations predictions, finals predictions for the acting categories, but even the technical categories, even the animated shorts and stuff like that I've done a lot of research on. Excited to share that with you as well. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.